Hello, everyone, and welcome to Marketing Roundtable, a BrainDo podcast. We are your hosts. I am Rachel Rhodes, the social media manager.
And I am Tatiana Knie-Smith, design lead.
For our very special inaugural episode, we have a very special first guest, our own Ron Sansone. Thank you so much for being here. Please kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, give us your elevator pitch of sorts, and let's get into it.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Ron Sansone. I'm the VP of SEO here at BrainDo. I oversee our organic search marketing practice, and I've been working in agency side SEO for the last 16 years.
So as an SEO expert, first question, number one thing, what is SEO? Basic, like for dummies. What does this mean? Why is it important?
SEO is the process of taking a website or online asset and positioning it so it appears for the proper terminology for your target audience. So if you're, selling cars, you want to show up for cars near me or things like that for, potential buyers. That's in essence what SEO is.
So, Ron, could you tell us a little bit about your areas of expertise?
Sure. I've been working in digital agencies for the last 16 years, as I'd mentioned. I have a background in advertising copywriting, digital marketing strategy, client pitching, scoping, all the fun nuts and bolts pieces of working in an agency.
Cool. Outside of SEO, being an expert, those very cool things, what do you do in your spare time?
When I'm not doing this, I'm playing music. I've been a performing vocalist in rock bands for the last 25 years or so. So when I'm not thinking about search engines, I'm usually thinking about a song or a melody.
That's really cool. How did you get into music?
I got into music at a very young age, probably early tweens, something like that. Just started out with a friend who got a guitar and did the usual garage band thing, and then the rest was history.
Classic.
Yeah.
So when did you kind of enter the marketing sphere?
That and the music stuff are kind of interconnected. I got into marketing because a lot of music involves self-promotion, and you're just constantly hustling to try and get people out to a show. So I realized somewhere along the line, all this work I was doing to get people out to gigs and things like that wasn't marketing. So at a certain point, I just made the decision to go full bore into it.
What were some of those things, like flyers? How are you advertising and trying to get people?
A lot of flyers, a lot of word of mouth, a lot of like going out to other people's shows and handing out flyers. This was well before social media.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of like boots on the ground kind of work.
The original social media, actually interacting with people.
But you ended up in like a very digital oriented field. Like how did you get into SEO from that sort of boots on the ground marketing?
I originally studied music business, the music business industry in college. But this is, I'm going to date myself a little bit. As I was getting into that, that was right around when Napster rolled out. So you can kind of see the writing on the wall. I originally wanted to get into music business management. Didn't see much of a shelf life there, so went into straight marketing from that. But everything was digital. At the time, we were looking at a marketing mix that was print advertising, television, radio, billboards, and then we had this other bucket that was just everything else, and that was what digital marketing was. But if you were young and you were on the internet, you could see where everything was headed. So I focused in college primarily on advertising copywriting, but really leaned into the web side of things.
So then after graduating with this, skill set in copywriting, what was kind of that journey between graduating and ending up SEO expert here at BrainDo?
So my first agency job, I got in a slightly roundabout way. I realized when I graduated, I didn't have any kind of actual internship experience. So I got the degree, then immediately took an internship and just kept showing up there until they hired me. Eventually, agencies being as they are, the copy director, left for another job. They said, congratulations, you're full-time now. That's when I started doing direct marketing copywriting for websites and things like that. That was a lot of writing advertisements, paid search ads at the time, web pages, stuff like that. what brought me into SEO was they eventually collapsed their content team and their SEO team into one.
Okay.
And something about that really kind of like scratched the right itch for me. You had this repository of language that here's what everyone on the internet is searching for and at what volume. And you could kind of catch this like sociological thread and connect that right to marketing.
So it seems like relatively early on in your career, you did get to see that marriage between content and SEO, which I'm sure has only really grown since then, especially now with social media and some of these new practices. But what was that kind of growth journey like?
At the time when I started in SEO, and this was before all of the bells and whistles in Google, it was just like 10 blue links on a page, no local stuff, no like universal search results, none of that. It was at the time coming out of the 90s into the early 2000s, it was like very technical practice. People didn't quite view SEO as marketing just yet. It was sort of set up as a practice in which people were trying to like game the system a little bit. Like, how do I get to the top of the Google search results? Not how do I make my website appeal to the right audience? So there was a lot of less savory tactics, I guess, we would employ. Like there was cloaking where you would have text the same color as the background so you couldn't see.
I remember that too, actually. Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, like that was a lot of people who were saying, what's the most potent term that everyone's searching for? Let me make sure my website appears for that.
Yeah.
Rather than thinking through like, how is this actually going to sell a product for me?
So how did you eventually come to land here at BrainDo?
From my first marketing job, I went to an agency called Razorfish, also based in Philadelphia. That's where I met Jenny and Brian Cosgrove right here at BrainDo. That was, I believe, my first role there. Jenny was, I think, the first account manager I worked with at that agency. And then I think Cosgrove was on that team. He was an SEO engineer at the time, if you can believe it.
Oh, so you were both in SEO together.
He then transitioned to analytics and started the whole Web Analytics Wednesday thing in Philly, and then BrainDo, and then the rest is history. I met him very early on in that journey, and I spent about 4.5 years or so at Razorfish building up the content side of their SEO practice before branching out and starting a full SEO department at another agency.
Oh, so you spearheaded that. You were kind of brought on to build out this SEO capability for this other agency.
Yeah, so I brought on kind of like a content angle of that.
Okay.
At the time, Brian was really in charge of like a lot of the technical side of that. So if it had something to do with like technical impediments to indexation, or there's something wrong with their server, or there's some weird esoteric technical issue, he was the guy to track that down. Now, what it had to do with language, that's where I stepped in.
Okay. Because something we've noticed on the team that we talk about a lot is that you do have a very deliberate and approachable communication style. So do you think that comes? Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We love how you talk to us and how you explain things. And it's really nice to, work with someone who's so great at communicating. Do you think that comes from your days as a copywriter in the agency, or is that just a skill?
I think it comes from just being very verbally focused in terms of how I think. I've noticed like when we interact with Tatiana, she thinks about like color and design and how things match and aesthetic. None of that is in my head at all. It's all like, what is the right words for this? How does the language fit into this kind of thing?
So you're just born with it.
I don't know. I think I just think about writing a lot more than I do about visual stuff.
I guess we talked that you ended up here at BrainDo. Like, I know we were through Cosgrove, and I know we were looking for an SEO person at the time. Like, I don't know. I'm curious to know a little bit more about like how that happened and what some of your impressions were, your experience coming to BrainDo as a company. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll tell you how I made my way to BrainDo. I invited Cosgrove out to a show that I was putting on in South Philly at this little hole in the wall bar called Century, and so he came out to see a show. Like, this was just like loud hard rock, like not his scene at all. So just awesome that he did. Right before I went on, I said, "Hey," he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" Like, "I'm okay, looking to make a change." He's like, "Well, we need an SEO person," and then that Monday, like, we just had a call and
serendipitous.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it all started at a rock show, ladies and gentlemen.
As most good things do. But yeah, my time at BrainDo has been great. My immediate demand, because that's exactly how my personality works, when I talked to Brian was, yes, I'd love to meet your team though. And we had this rapid fire series of meetings where it was like, I think in the span of an hour and a half, I must have talked to like 9, 10, 12 people, something crazy like that.
You were here in this office?
It was all Zoom. It was all Zoom at the
Zoom.
time, yeah. But that's the reason I joined on, is because everyone I talked to was like sharp. They knew their stuff, they knew their disciplines, and like really cared about marketing. So yeah, a lot of potential, and I wanted to be part of it.
Great to hear.
All right, so now that we have a lot of Ron's background, some super cool fun facts like being in a rock band, hello, we're going to transition now into, some more technical SEO talk. So digital marketing heavily relies on website health, and how does technical SEO aid in this? And if you would like, maybe step it back. And what is technical SEO?
Let's step it all the way back.
Okay.
There's kind of 3 core elements to SEO, and it has to do with how the web is indexed by search engines. There is obviously the content piece. You have to have content that can rank for the right kinds of terms for a specific search term. There are the technical components too. How is your website structured? What are your servers like? How fast does your page load? Have you coded anything in a really weird way that's not indexable? And then there's signals from around the web. So this is what Google brought into play within the search engine landscape. Before Google, we didn't really use link signals. Everything was built off of kind of library science, where it was based off of like directory structures. So in the days of Microsoft Search and Yahoo and those kinds of engines, they were very content focused, and they would go to old directories like DMOZ, I think was like the original big directory. And that was looked at for trust and authority signals. You'd say, this website appears in DMOZ. They have a full directory listing. We know they're a legitimate site. Google took that information at the start, but they also said, what is also a really good point of validation? If one website's linking to another, we can kind of view that as a vote in its favor in terms of its level of authority. And that's when that third component, links, really started to matter in SEO. Because every link was a vote of confidence, essentially, for your website. So, that's the three big areas: content, technical components, and link signals, essentially. The technical piece, I think that was like probably the most obvious first component of SEO. Like industry-wise, it kind of ebbs and flows, where it's technical first practice to a content first practice. And I think we're kind of swinging back into technical, just because we've gone through the transition from primarily people searching on computers to now everything is mobile first in every way. Tatiana knows this from the design side. Everything has to be responsive design now to scale to the proper screen resolution. Same thing with SEO. Mobile first means you're going to keep in mind that someone is on the move. So you saw like a lot of near me searches pop up over time. So there's a little bit more of a technical consideration now. We sort of structure by design, by device type. We look at what's going to prevent something from being indexed or serving for a particular purpose. Everything from, let's say, for example, if you're redesigning your website and your website's completely different from the version that came before, you have to have a plan in place. Because Google has indexed your old website, you need to give them a seamless pathway to index your new website, hopefully for the same or similar terms, so that you can retain your traffic level. So every page needs a redirect from the old page to the new, hopefully passing the right value or like the right level of relevancy. So if you're, selling a camera, you want your old camera page to point to the new one and not the, page for some other type of product.
This podcast is powered by BrainDo, a digital marketing agency that not only provides a diverse mix of digital services, but offers guidance, experience, and true partnership to bring your business to the next level. This episode is about SEO, but we offer expertise in data, analytics, development, design, and social, just to name a few. We've worked with businesses on every level, from local operations to Fortune 500 companies across a variety of industries. We have experts to help strategize and execute your digital marketing needs. No matter what step in the process you're at, we're there for you, from wireframes to paid campaigns. BrainDo, experts in everything digital. Please reach out today to learn more about how we can help your business grow. So something I noticed, we did some of our own research to prepare. I'm in design, you're in social. I didn't realize, evidently SEO is kind of like a bad reputation. Like, how did that happen?
Explain.
How did we get that bad reputation?
Yeah.
I think this comes from the old history of SEO. Starting from like a kind of like outsider marketing, where you were just trying to rank your website to show up at the top of the results by any means necessary. This is before people really saw that as a marketing discipline. Like, that came with time. The reputation is from like those unscrupulous kind of tactics of buying a bunch of like links or something to try and boost yourself up the rankings, or I think I mentioned the cloaking thing before. There's a bunch of other like weird tactics like that where you could kind of try and game the system. We lost that over time because SEO is sort of connected to everything. It's a distribution mechanism. So if you can show your website or your app or whatever the asset is to the right audience, like, you're going to be okay. It's not so much now too with personalized search. It's less about like, you have to be number one for this term, because number one is relative. Like, your experience on Google is going to be completely different from mine because the results are personalized in a different way. So now it's about appealing to the right audience. And that really comes back around to marketing and messaging, and ties into what marketing messaging is, rather than, hey, you have to show up for this term.
As you were talking about why the content is important to match up to what people are searching, it sounds like there would be like some real like practical downsides to going that sort of route, like bounce rates. Like, that's something I'm familiar with as a designer. Like, what are there other like really known downsides that would like impact the performance of everything, despite being like number one on Google? Like,
there's a lot of things that can trip you up with organic search in general. We live and die by how people actually use language, and there's a lot of overlap. So if you're working on paid search, for instance, you can filter with negative keywords or target in a specific way. Organic search is much more of like a blast, meaning if there's like vernacular overlap, if people use the same type of language but apply it to something differently, we have to kind of account for that. We have to kind of cut through signal noise. Like, a lot of it's about intent. So if I'm searching for cars, that can mean any number of things. That can mean I'm looking for a car. It could mean I want to see the movie Cars. I want to look at pictures of cars. So a lot of times when we're doing keyword research, we're looking at from the angle of how is the searcher intending to use this keyword? What are they looking to find with it? And we'll make selections for language choices based on if that term is unequivocally targeting our audience or a specific user intent.
And another follow-up, when I was looking around, doing my research again.
The ether of the internet.
Yeah. Some of the kind of the like short bullets of like good SEO versus like bad SEO. It was like, do good content and avoid bad content. And I mean, that sounds very subjective and vague. Like, could you, give us some background on what actually means quality content and what makes content bad?
Yeah, I think we kind of we kind of speak in riddles a little bit about SEO, which is unfair. And there's sort of a cottage industry that's popped up of like SEO gurus and experts who are essentially marketing SEO practices to other like marketing professionals.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit of like where the confusion comes from. When we're talking about good content, we mean essentially two things. One, content that actually matches what your user is looking for.
Right.
Like the entire piece of content matches that. So like if I'm looking for like a movie time near me for a specific movie, I want a page that shows my local theater, where the movie's playing, and what the times are.
Right.
That's going to be an exact match. Matching intent is like the key piece. The other piece is how do you structure your content? Is it like easy to read? So, for instance, if I took you to a website where all of the content was one big image, a search engine is essentially a visually impaired user. They can't look at images. So you've essentially given them a blank page that can't rank for anything. But if you had structured your page where you have like a nice headline that's very clear, perhaps you're answering or starting to reflect the user's query in the title, at least showing some connection there. And then maybe you're using subheaders that also reflect that kind of language or lead them down the right path. If you're linking out to other pages that also can have like ancillary value, all of this stuff helps.
So those few items are more so like the technical side of SEO. And you had mentioned earlier and throughout what we've been saying so far that content has become super important. So at this point, we're going to transition into more content SEO. And when it comes to, everything from a blog to social media to actual website page content, what are some of the things that people need to make sure they have optimized?
Well, I think it's important to remember when you're talking about SEO that we're talking about language and intent and how people are expressing themselves. And a website needs to kind of match the user's expectations in terms of tonality, in terms of, language choice. You really, search is positioned so that someone is posing a query or a question and you're responding to that and answering that with your content. So when we're talking about how do you optimize your content, you're really talking about how do you create the best content experience to answer someone's question. A lot of that means understanding the intention of why someone is typing something in. There's a difference between, we talk about it as marketers from the decision-making funnel perspective too. Like, are you generally interested? Are you comparing something? Are you ready to buy something? We think about that in terms of language when we're structuring web pages, content, website, anything, to align with where somebody is in that journey. So I think in terms of optimizing content, it's making sure that it's answers that intent, that it is indexable from the technical perspective, like you can actually see it if you are, looking at it from the perspective of actual text, and that you're structuring in a way that a search engine and a user can grasp the topic and purpose of that content right away. So in journalism, that's called inverted pyramid style, where you're starting with the largest topic first, and then funneling down into subtopics.
Right. And
you support that structurally with, here's the title tag, here's your headline, here's every subheader, and on down the line.
Right.
And then in interconnecting that to other content assets that are supporting that. So, for instance, if you are looking at apparel on an e-commerce website, something that'd be very helpful content is a easy link to like a size chart too.
So I know with beefing up an organic social media strategy, something that you want to see is like reach. That's a pretty good indicator that what you're doing is working in its ecosystem. So what are those kind of indicators that you look for that something's kind of picking up a lot more?
The primary concern with SEO is the main point of entry. Where the reason that rankings are important is because Google's a really, really strong distribution mechanism. So that listing is a link into a page, and that click into the page, that entrance point is very, very valuable and validating for Google, for SEO, because we know we showed up for the term, we had the right asset ranking for it, and people used it. Click-through rate's important. We look at clicks and entrances more than we do things like impressions on the that's a little bit more important to the paid media side. User engagement metrics, very, very valuable. Time on site, pages per session, bounce rate, obviously, and conversion rate. So we also will look from the analytics perspective at the journey, like which pages are they going through and their on-site journey too. Because you can make decisions about like connectivity between those pages. Should there be a better, smoother path to get to like an endpoint and skip a few pages in that process? You can refine content. You can see what's really valuable to people, like thematically. So those are some of the areas that we look at for content optimization.
So we have talked about some of the like benefits and what we're looking for in SEO and like why you want to do it. For someone who's like considering a SEO strategy, like what are some risks or drawbacks you could face if you decide to like I don't need to deal with SEO right now, or that sort of scenario?
Oh, if you want to cut corners?
Yeah.
If you want to do some shady things to try and rank higher? Well, you could, get the hammer brought down on you by Google for that. One of the things that Google can do to you is if they see you doing something like, I don't know, buying a bunch of links that are irrelevant, doing something that's against their guidelines, they can do something like give you an unnatural link penalty. I've seen that maybe once in my actual career happen to someone, and it was for like a very specific reason. They didn't realize they'd hired a news distribution service to put out some of their articles around the web, and they had, for instance, one news article was on like 1,000 different websites, and it was the same link pointing back to them with the same anchor text. Google caught that and saw a pattern of behavior and put an unnatural inbound link penalty on them, which means like your rankings immediately tank. You're not going to be visible on Google for the things you really need to be.
So that's like being put in the spam folder at that point.
Yeah, it's Google jail, I guess.
Google jail.
And it takes a while to dig out of that because you have to show good faith that it was either by accident or it was an honest mistake, or you're at least some form of contrition and making steps to fix that. And that can take a long time. I think in the instance that I dealt with, we noticed the problem. I brought in an SEO expert on the matter. This a wonderful woman, Marie Haynes. She helped guide the whole like link remediation process for getting through that penalty. So I think that process took about 4 months or so, which was pretty quick, all things considered.
I can't believe that's like the fast version is 4 months.
Yeah, I've seen it take for other sites things anywhere from like 8 months to a year.
That's crazy.
You have to go through multiple rounds of resubmitting to Google.
Yeah.
Wow.
So how do you prove that making a mistake was a mistake? Like, how do you prove that bad SEO was an accident or something like this?
It's a back and forth communication with Google.
Okay, like a representative.
Yeah, granted, I'm going off of 6-year-old memory of this. But I believe there was a submission process, and we pinpointed like, here's the links that we captured, here's what we're doing to correct that, and then resubmit. Eventually, I think we got through. I think we only had to go through that process once. Because Marie's really good.
It feels like something you would learn from pretty quickly.
I don't think that client ever did that again.
Yeah, and I guess kind of follow up with that, especially when you're talking about backlinks that they like paid for a service with, and when you're like doing some basic research on SEO, it says like you don't want to like purchase backlinks, and it's really easy from like a outsider perspective to be confused at like what that is between like sponsored sort of content. I know like my mom constantly falls for these blogs she's sending me where it's like clearly just a listicle of people who paid to have like be on somebody else's blog and have a short like 2-sentence article like write up about them. Like where like is there a line between that and these bad backlinks, or is that even like a solution that came out of the other type of backlinks being put down and like penalized? Like what's going on there?
So I think I said at the start, one of the things that differentiated Google was this reliance on link signals initially. That's what set them apart. You know, this whole concept of PageRank that's tied into these different types of like link and content and technical signals and things like that. When you're looking at links as a signal of kind of like that vote of confidence thing, you have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, just because by nature, most links are going to be unnatural. Think about how you would link out to content if you're trying to share it out. If you're writing a blog, you're going to link out to something you're referencing. Maybe you see that in the news all the time. If you're referencing something that happened that was covered by a previous article, you might link out to that, with hypertext. But a lot of times, linking is very deliberate. So for Google, it's hard to draw that line. So there's things that they've provided to help you indicate that something shouldn't be counted in that respect. One is a no follow tag that says, we have a reason for this link. Don't use this link as context for ranking purposes, though. So there are some guardrails that are put in place.
I think that's a bigger thing we've been seeing in digital marketing in general, is this push towards more transparency and genuine, authentic content, and not just repeating and recycling content. And even if you do, even if you have something very similar to say as someone else, it's making sure you reframe things in a different way. And yeah, I see that big trend with transparency and making sure things aren't just copy paste everywhere.
It's also important to recognize that Google's learning all the time too. There's hundreds of thousands of updates being made all the time.
Cool, but a little scary.
And now they have RankBrain and machine learning involved in the Google algorithm. So now it's taken out of human hands and it's refining as it goes.
So that's interesting. This idea of like AI and machine learning. You've been in this space for a long time. How has that kind of evolved, and where do you maybe see this AI stuff going?
It's funny because I think the AI stuff was most noticeable on the content side from the publisher perspective. That was one of the less scrupulous tactics, people making spun content that was computer generated to try and rank for something.
Yeah.
I think the challenge with AI and that being now a part of the algorithmic backbone is it's refining as it goes, which is helpful to Google. To us, we have less clear signals. It does mean that we have to kind of rely on the core tenets of SEO, which is, are you creating an asset that's absolutely relevant for the thing that you're targeting, the topic, the keyword. I wouldn't even say targeting a keyword anymore. You really have to target a specific like vertical and theme of keywords to really show up for it, because personalized search. It's sort of segmented search results in a way, because we have personalized search results. That's going to be refined for each user even more as time goes on, thanks to machine learning. Mm-hmm. So as Google gets smarter, we have to kind of rely more on the human aspect of that. Are we really targeting language appropriately? Are we targeting the right people who are using that language with the right asset?
Yeah. I know we've probably all seen recommended searches for things that go in both directions. Like, wow, that's too specific. Are you reading my mind? Versus like, where did this come from? I don't understand why this is being recommended to me right now. What behavior have I exhibited online in the past to lead to this being recommended to me right now? We've all been there. Yeah,
there's also like that kind of like YouTube roulette thing. YouTube's sort of like the second largest search engine rather.
Right.
And as the second largest search engine, if you look at a video on Google, you're going to get like 1,000 things that are kind of like that.
Right.
So you always have that, should I click this or not? What's the ramification?
Yeah, it's a consideration now. Like, how's this going to change what's recommended to me if I click on this one thing right now? It's crazy.
Yeah, I hope that RankBrain and Google AI stuff at least makes autocompletes a little bit better over time.
And you mentioned social or YouTube, search engines, all that coming together. And we know there's been like a shift in not just Google is a search engine, but other platforms becoming more involved with search. And like on top of that, we're seeing more implications. I've heard from Rachel, so I'll pass this over to Rachel soon, but like more implications of like actually trying to get like keywords and stuff into not just hashtags anymore, but like the caption of your post and things like that. Like as these two things are converging, like I posted both of you. Like, where do you see this going? How is it like your disciplines become more intertwined? Like
there's definitely a lot more of an SEO and search component in social media. Like you said, like algorithms are starting to read captions. They're starting to read images, like on Facebook and the text that you put on different thumbnails for things. So you do need to make sure that you're not just following trending hashtags, but also different trending keywords and other topics out there. And similar to what Ron was saying about making sure the content on your website is actually relevant to what you're doing. Like you can't just post a video of you in a cafe in Australia and then tag like hashtag like London cafes, because it's going to pick up on that's not where you are. You're misleading your audience. That's going to count either neutrally or against you. So they are definitely getting closer and closer together, social media and the world of SEO, which is exciting, I think, because, it's just more of a way for us to optimize our content and make sure that we're staying relevant.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, they were never really separate. And we're still talking about content, but we're just talking about a video format of content. YouTube has its own search engine. It operates off of search queries. And they're just getting better at serving you those results now. Everything's defined by video title. There's a description. There's other elements they could scan. Maybe a transcription if you're really getting fancy with it. But at the end of the day, we're still just talking about finding a way to take a content asset and show it to the right people. Video, that's a little bit more challenging because you're presenting a visual element, and it's you really live or die by how you define what that video is about.
Yeah. And now even Instagram in its own right, with a pretty recent update, has become a search engine in its own right. You can just type in the top like healthy recipes and it'll show hashtags, most relevant videos. It'll show accounts that maybe include that in their bio or something. So that's huge. And now TikTok is very similarly for the younger audiences also being used as a search engine.
Yeah, I think that's important too, because that's a change in user behavior. I think the younger you are, the more likely you are to be viewing video content in general and interacting with search features of like a TikTok or YouTube.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about a lot how like the content then relates to new practices in social where these like algorithms are going. Do we see maybe something in the near future where more technical aspects of SEO are then being like reapplied to organic search and become part of that, not organic search, organic social and becoming part of that discipline? Like if we were to start doing like keyword research for captions and things like that. Do we see that happening? Or
that's already happening.
It's already happening. But there's breaking news.
There's also when you're talking about social media, you have to separate content and production versus strategy. And strategy, like, I have my hand in both. So I do partake in hashtag research, which is keyword strategy. It is. And there are different like tools and apps and websites you can use, but then there's also just like the old school approach of like searching for something and seeing what's recommended from that and following those like spider webs and different trails. So I'm curious for what you have to say to that as well, but it's definitely already happening. They are already married.
Yeah, all of this stuff's kind of cross-pollinated too.
Yeah.
Even on the SEO side, if we're looking at for a particular intent, we might look at hashtag research just to see if people are looking at this from a visual perspective or, from a social media perspective in general. Is there anything we can learn and apply to our SEO keyword research and organic search performance? Same thing on the paid search side too. We'd love to look at paid search. Let's see what's working too and see how we can kind of coordinate. Because that's really great for finding like purchase intent stuff too and seeing what's working.
Okay, here's a big question. Should everyone have a blog? I know the internet's gone through ebbs and flows of like, we need a blog, we all need a blog, and like, you don't really need a blog.
What do you need a blog about? Like, what do you want to write a blog about is, I think, the better question. Everyone who has a really good idea about something to write about, probably should have a blog. Seems like a good way to get that out there.
Goes back to quality content over quantity of content.
Yeah, I mean, expression for the sake of expression is one thing. Expression with intent is something that's actionable, something you can, build traction with.
Okay, so like, is having a blog an SEO strategy?
Absolutely. Here's a good example of where that could come in useful. So an e-commerce site, a lot of those assets are really hard to rank for a very specific reason. You have a database of inventory, and those product pages are rendered based on the elements that are put into the database. So you have this constantly churning inventory. So it's hard to latch on to something, and it's very specific. So if you're looking at shoes or something, you're looking for a very specific model of shoe, and it's going to have all the pertinent information for that. That's pretty far down the decision-making funnel, though. So a lot of the unbranded search targeting is going to happen on the category page level. Now, those category pages are also fueled by a database of inventory. So you don't know from day to day what's going to be on that page. That's all dynamic. So you need like a static content element to make sure that you can connect that page to specific unbranded terms.
Wow.
In the commerce space, do you think this is why we're seeing more like, online shopping instead of just categories like men's, women's, outerwear, etc.? Now it says things like day party dresses, going out wear.
Specific collections. Too.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
That's a lot of it. So back to the blog piece. For an e-commerce site where you have all these dynamic elements that are in play, and it's really hard to get unbranded keywords in there for static across static elements, a blog is fantastic because you can write long-form content about something that, if it's like apparel, is highly visual, and you can get that kind of language in there, and then point links back to specific pages that add context, and that context can help them rank. So you might not rank for, best running shoes for fall weather or something with your actual like shoes page or running shoes page, but you could get that with the blog, and at least if not, send a right signal to that page in the e-commerce side of the website. You could rank and then have a 2-click pathway into it.
Is there any kind of best practice for length of blog or how often you're posting? Like, I know with social on certain platforms, you have to be consistent or you start to fall off a bit. Does the same thing apply to blogs?
Yes, but I always feel like that bar is really high. A lot of the critical mass kind of research suggests like to really hit critical mass with a blog, you'd have to post daily, which is insane. No one's going to keep up that frequency. Optimal blog length is somewhere between like 250 to 500 words. Like 500 words starts to get into like full article territory. Like 1,000 is like feature length. Wow. So like a good content piece for in a practical sense from what you can actually produce, if you could put out 3 good blog posts a week, that you're already ahead of the game.
Wow.
I think that's a lot of content. That's, I think, way more content production than like I expected. Yeah. I mean, I know on social, that's like socials putting that out, but to have like full blogs 3 times a week.
That does feel like a lot.
Yeah.
And you need a strategy for that too.
Yeah.
So, Rachel, you deal with this on the social side. You're creating social calendars all the time. You can do the same thing for blogs too. Editorial calendar creation based on keyword research, understanding what your audience is interested in, and then connecting those kind of like co-relevant topics to your core offering. So you can say, if you're interested in running shoes, you're probably interested in running, maybe trail running, maybe marathon running. And you can kind of connect those 2 ideas a little bit more directly to start to lure your audience in to make a decision that's maybe more purchase oriented.
And obviously, as a copywriter, if you're starting a blog, don't sound too salesy. Like, actually, if you're going to write a blog about running trails, actually talk about trails, not just, well, our shoes have the best blah, blah, blah for this, because you want people to actually read these things. They don't just exist for SEO.
You do have to write like a human, and I don't mean like just like don't Like, don't just write for search engines, but also don't just write sales copy. Everyone hates that. Yeah. And I think everyone's a lot more savvy these days, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bad content.
Yeah.
I mean, quality content.
Right. Back to e-commerce, I've definitely seen descriptions for items where it's like 3 items in this sentence in a row are just 3 search terms very clearly that they just threw into this description, and it doesn't read well.
You see a lot of that in like eBay product listings, too.
eBay.
Going from like best practices of a blog, like we've covered such a tiny little bit of all there is to do with SEO. But some kind of quick off the cuff tips to give listeners some advice to help improve their own SEO. What can you recommend?
I think in SEO, the best way to look at it is what you see is what you get. I don't believe, well, there may be some secret sauce. I think that the best way to approach SEO in a client relationship is full transparency. Here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing that. And here's what we think it's going to result in.
Right.
In terms of optimizing content, the most important thing you can do is target what your audience is looking for and understanding who they are. On the social side, this might be persona development. You kind of put yourself in the shoes of your audience and structure your language and the universe of keywords that you're targeting to match that. You're going to be in such good shape. The next thing is like content structuring. I think if you're thinking about content, like from an article perspective, you're trying to get a point across, think about, that inverted pyramid style, like go explain what you're doing up top and then go deeper, maybe even go beginning, middle, end, but define your content with actual labels. And by that, I mean like subheaders, smart copy, links out to other relevant things. Show the context of what your content is expressing, but also show like every little component of that too. Just show this is where we're going to be talking about the specifics. This is the research area behind it. Whatever the article's about, you want to make sure that you're leading someone down a clear path of from the beginning to the end of your content topic.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. And as we're wrapping up here, something I wanted to ask you. Our next episode is going to be about design and UX and reducing fatigue and decision making. And for someone who's interested in SEO, listening to this episode, perhaps, like, why should they be interested in listening to like a UX episode? Like, where does that overlap? Why are they both important? Like, where do they intersect?
Where does UX and SEO overlap?
Yeah.
That's a very good question. So think about your homepage for a second. That's the most important page of your website. It's, for many people, their first entry point into the site. Right. Most websites, it's usually over 50% of people enter the site through the homepage. If your homepage has bad UX, people are going to be bouncing like crazy. If you have a great user experience, you can take that user and like plot them wherever they are in their journey to the content they need to get to. You see that on a lot of, like, Amazon's a really good example of that. They give you so many options, but it's kind of a drill down of like, what are you interested in right now? Here's your recommendations based on your past history. Here's what we're promoting. But it takes you through that journey of here's the things that are probably going to be relevant to you. Let's get you there as fast as possible and in the most convenient way. There's tons of overlap between UX and SEO. One is about helping you make the right decision for you. The other is phrasing that in a way that reflects what you're looking for so you can easily identify it.
All very important.
I mean, once you get people to a destination, you want them to stay there. You want them to hang out.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like SEO is something from a very, like, iceberg level, along with many disciplines in marketing. You can be like, oh, I see this tip of the iceberg. I could do that. I could tackle that for our business. This person who does email marketing can also do like SEO or something. I feel like it's so easy to think that. And on surface level, you might, from like all these quick tip articles, the way like everything's become so DIY and listicle based, like there's so many steps to follow. But I'm like, wow, I had so many things wrong. Like, and now we know more. This is so informative.
It's also, like many things in digital marketing, always changing. There are always going to be updates, and you need to be paying attention. So, even if you used to work with a guy 3 years ago and this is what he said to do, that's probably changed. You probably need to, update your strategies, making sure you're talking to the right people that are staying well informed and well researched. And that's definitely, I know, for us, very important.
It's a full-time job.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks for spending time with us. Learn more about BrainDo and our marketing services on our website, www.brain.do. If you'd like to see more from us, consider subscribing or giving us a follow. We can be found at brain.do on Instagram and TikTok, and BrainDo on LinkedIn. If you learned something helpful from this episode, please consider leaving a review. See you next time at the Roundtable.